I'm eager to talk to you today, Melissa, because when we were brainstorming about topics for today's episode, neither of us had anything. We were like, I got nothing. There's so much going on in the world. It kind of broke our brains. And then you said, well, let me see if I can make a list of some things we could talk about. And the next thing I know, I'm reading an entire Google document of the most creative, practical hacks that parents could use in their homeschool that I've read in a long time. And I was elated. I love this topic.
I'm so happy this came together, and it's been a little empowering, I want to say, because I really did feel like just sort of blank in the brain today. And I thought, wow, I hope Julie's got something good. And then you said you too, we're feeling blank in the brain.
Yes.
But here's what happened. When I started, I thought, you know what? I've had times in my life as a homeschooling mom when there's so much lifing all around me, either in the world or in our personal life, that I felt, a little flat or a little out of ideas or low energy. And I started thinking about what did I rely on in those moments? Because I, have been homeschooling since the 90s, the very end of the 90s. Okay. And a lot of these moments have come along. I started making a list. And the more I thought about it, the more I got, the more it was very exciting. And I want to say that right up front, that all of you listening have so many good ideas. And sometimes you forget how much you know. I forgot that I knew all this stuff. I forgot I came up with this stuff.
That is such a beautiful way to look at this list, that even you who are listening right now, sure, you're going to get some ideas because Melissa has compiled such a great set of activities. But if you sat down right now with your own empty Google Doc and you started thinking about things that you consider practical hacks for your homeschool experience, once you got started, you would even see that list grow. And in fact, at the end of this episode, we will invite you to share some of those ideas so we can share them on a future podcast. But let's dive right in, Melissa. You have this lovely list. So I'm going to ask you first, tell me a little bit about what this first item is that has to do with an adhesive whiteboard. What is that exactly?
Okay, you can buy these rolls of whiteboard material that has a sticky backing, and you can just stick it on the wall and it peels off. Like, I don't know if it pulls off paint, check it, but mine is stuck on the wall and I've never tried to take it off. And so it's just a whiteboard. But the idea of having a huge chalkboard or whiteboard on the wall, we moved into this house and I just didn't get around to it. And then when I found that I could just get a roll and cut off the size that I needed and slap it on the wall, and then I put one on the side of the bookshelf next to the chair where I sit to read. And whenever something comes up, I just write a note to myself on that whiteboard if I don't feel like, okay, you get the idea.
Yes.
And whiteboards, we've talked about the power of whiteboards. I want to say some of what's in this list we're going to roll through. Some of it is ideas that we have shared in the context of other discussions. Some of it's stuff we've never talked about. Compiling them into one big idea list is something that we can share. We're going to share it in a form that people could print it out.
That's fantastic. I love that. And actually, one of the things when you mentioned the adhesive whiteboard, the word adhesive is what really stood out to me. So these can be moved around the house. Is that what you're saying?
It's like peel on, stick on. It's like got a sticky backing.
That's perfect. And that just gives you, so if you think about places that you spend a lot of time, having an adhesive whiteboard in those spaces would be valuable.
I mean, you could probably put it on a coffee table now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
It came in a roll like wrapping paper or contact paper. And I just cut the size that I needed.
I can totally see how your train of thought went, because your next item has to do with painter's tape. So tell me about that.
Okay, painter's tape is such a good hack because it comes off without damaging the paint, right?
Yes.
So slap a long piece of painter's tape on your wall for a timeline, and then you can use index cards or sticky notes. If you use Post-its, you probably have to use washi tape or something to make them actually, or little bits of painter's tape to make them stick. But just a straight line of painter's tape on the wall as a timeline, mark a couple of increments on it with a Sharpie, if you're careful not to like go off and get the really, wide, like they sell it in different widths, right? So
Yes.
3 inches maybe.
Yeah.
And then using index cards for, we've just watched a movie or read a book or learned about something, and you can write that event on and stick it on the wall.
That's beautiful.
A no frills timeline.
Yes, a no frills timeline. That's fantastic. I remember having a timeline similar to that in my bedroom back when I had one of my kids. We built it because I had a really, really long wall. And so I was during the postpartum recovery from birth with my newborn, and we populated that timeline from my bed, right? So that's the other advantage. You can pick a room that you spend a lot of time in and build that timeline out. Yeah. That's amazing.
And if you don't have a long wall, you can do a vertical timeline. That's going to work too, right?
Yeah, that's true too.
And I think a hack I've shared before is if we read a historical fiction book, I would print out the book cover small and we would paste that. I mean, in those days, we had a big butcher paper timeline, so we'd paste it on our timeline. But you could do it this way, too.
I had a book of centuries that was the Charlotte Mason idea, where the timeline was in basically what was like a photo album. She has a way to build one. So if you're looking it up, maybe I can dig up a link somewhere. But anyway, there's a certain number of pages for a really long time ago. And then as you get closer and closer to the 20th and 21st century, you have to have more pages for more decades, right? But it was really fun because we would draw or cut out images that would go on those pages and build that out. And so same as you, when we would read a historical fiction book, we would either write the name or copy or draw the book cover and put that in the location. So yeah, those are different ways to do timelines. And for some kids, a timeline is really exciting because they love numbers. For other kids, a little less so. It feels kind of abstract. So just feel out your child. But it is always fun to put things on walls.
I agree.
You have a really great game that you played with 2 of your girls with index cards related to timelines. What's that called?
So there was this game that you can buy called Chronology, and it has this set of cards with historical events, and you draw cards and you try and put them down in the right order. So you're building a sort of timeline on the table. We moved and lost our game and missed it. So we started making our own chronology cards just anytime, again, any event that we learned about or any historical figure, we made an index card from them. I would shuffle the cards. You put one card down on the table. That's okay. History is going to happen either before or after that event. And then the way we wound up playing it was I would just hold up a card and the kids would take turns and say it goes before or it goes after. And the more cards you've got down on the table, the more you're, sandwiching events between other events. And as we added to it through the course of one academic year, they got so good. It really contextualized, oh, right, this was happening. Sometimes there were events where it would be like a row of cards because they all happened in roughly the same time.
Yes. Okay, but here's what I'm realizing listening to you. So one side of the card would be the event. Is the date on the other side? Because you have to be able to validate whether you got it right, correct?
I'm so glad you clarified that. Yes. That's why I'm the one holding up the cards, looking at the date on the back.
But what a fun game to create from scratch, because even selecting the events, selecting the description of the event that goes on the front-facing card, and then writing the date on the back yourself is already helping you encode that information in a way that just buying a prepackaged deck of cards wouldn't. I mean, that's still a fantastic game, but doing it yourself, I would think, adds a whole layer to it.
Yes, I would have them make the cards, and it was a very casual process. There's more hacks I'm realizing as we're talking about it. I stuck blank index cards in every book that we were reading together. And I had them stashed where we watched movies, right? So I could say, make a card. And they would make the card.
That's amazing.
And Julie, they did tend to remember best the cards that they made, each of them.
Of course. they're doing it in their own handwriting. They're describing it using their own vocabulary. And honestly, I mean, I've never done this game, but the first thing I thought of was I would probably want to even color code them by arts, sciences, warfare, politics, sociology, culture. Like if you wanted to, you could get kind of sophisticated with this. But what a unique way to learn chronology of history as opposed to just sort of memorizing a list of facts and taking a quiz. What a fun way to do it.
One addition we made to the game at a certain point was we had all learned the Horrible Histories Monarch song, the English monarchs.
Yes.
So we made a card for each one because we knew the order they reigned in. And those became good hooks because, somebody would be like, when did Thomas More write Utopia? Oh, wait, he was king during the reign of, or, he was alive during the reign of, and
yes,
they had a hook.
No, that's right. I mean, same thing could happen with presidents. We used to play this trivia game, my boyfriend and my daughter and I. He loves biographies and he reads historical biographies of presidents all the time. And when Catram was in AP government, she was doing the same thing. So they would end up in these like Trivial Pursuit quizzes, right? But presidents help you hang certain events on the timeline. And if you know who was president when an event took place, that helps you understand the context. So I can totally picture that with the monarchs. That's really clever.
Yeah, really good hooks.
Well, so history is not just a series of events. History is also geographical. What do you do to study the way our world connects to itself through geography?
I have shared in the past that my family goes through periods of being really, really into geocaching. Geocaching is a really good way to deepen your exploration of local geography and history because people are very thoughtful about the caches that they create. They often, the name or some theme to the little, treasure that they've made to hide in a location that you're going to look for using latitude and longitude clues. People have been clever about often linking that to the location or to a historical event. And so if you're geocaching around your town or somewhere that you're visiting, you learn about local geography because you're really mapping terrain and about the history because people have worked the history into their theme.
That's amazing. And geocaching is something you can look up online to understand how to do it in your location, wherever you live. Geocaching is international, isn't it?
It is. In fact, this is another aspect of geocaching. People get certain tiny little devices, like ours was a grasshopper, and it has a serial number on it. And you register the number. It's called a trackable, and you can register it at the geocaching website. And anybody who finds a trackable in a geocache logs the find. And our grasshopper went from San Diego to ironically, Oregon. It came to Portland before we did. It traveled all over the country, but then it's been all around the world. I think last time we checked, it had been to like 16 different countries.
I mean, that is exciting. And again, it's these personal connections, right? Like when you know someone from another country, you suddenly are more interested in that country. When you have an item that has traveled without you to another country, you're suddenly more interested in it. When you're watching the Olympics and you see, somebody in the Paralympics and they're coming from France, now suddenly France is interesting to you because you have a personal connection. So geocaching is a way of creating and forging not just international connections, but connections to your local terrain and neighborhoods as well, which leads us to something that you talked about. You're talking about urban planning. And before we get to your hack, I wanted to say I joined an urban hiking group in my city a couple of years ago. And what we would do is we would meet downtown and the leader would take us on an urban hike. And we would learn about what Cincinnati was like over the last 100 years or more. And so we were on these old stair steps that were covered in ivy, going up the hills, the way that workers who worked down at the Ohio River would return to their homes that were built into the hills. We were going to the various places where they have these really elaborate mural work that would be like graffiti, but not graffiti, right? It's like art outside. So many interesting, learned about different buildings, what they used to house, and now they're coffee shops, right? So there is something about really getting to know your city on foot that is also an exciting way to get to know it. But you talk about something else.
But I want to respond to your idea because I love that walking tours, especially in the place where you live,
Yes.
are so magical. I did one in Portland, the Albina Soul Walk, and it was a man who had worked at the black jazz clubs, 60 years ago. He was very elderly. His son was driving him around from stop to stop, and the rest of us would walk. And he told us about the history of this neighborhood, the changes that happened. It was really incredible. It made me feel it opened doors to me of knowledge of the place where I live that I would not have encountered, and that I'm grateful that he shared that knowledge. Right?
Yes.
So absolutely. And if spring is calling to people, and you just want to be outside, like you take a month, 2 months, and do every walking tour in your town.
Yeah. Or if you have older kids, take a Segway tour. Oh my gosh, they love those. That's another way to get around your city and get to know it. So, Melissa, what else do you do to understand your city better?
We have gotten really into watching urban planning videos.
Oh my gosh.
So there's a guy that we especially love. His YouTube name is The Happy Urbanist, and we'll link to it. John. He's in Tennessee, but he travels around the country. And okay, he does these incredible short videos about like a particular intersection, and using that intersection, you start to learn a lot about like the flow of traffic, how cities are designed, what affects quality of life, what affects car accidents, what affects local businesses, housing. Like it's all so interconnected. And you begin to see it. Then you notice what he's talking about, these concepts that he's educating us on start to show up around town. Like, for example, we just watched one. He talked about a podium building. This is a type of construction that is very common right now. You'll see it go up. They're sort of like tall rectangular buildings, and it'll be 5/1. The ground floor is concrete, and then you can put 5 like lighter weight wood frame floors on top of that. And the ground floor is often used for commercial use, and then residences above. Start looking for them. You'll see them.
Oh, they're everywhere in Ohio. They're building them everywhere, constantly.
Now I have a name for them, and I understand the reasons they're going up everywhere. Okay, there's lots of good urban planners online.
Amazing. So what is a way that we can find those urban planning videos, etc.?
You can do a broad search, just urban planning in YouTube. But if you put in like the name of, so let's say I go to YouTube and I put in Portland urban planning, Portland buildings, Portland neighborhoods, Portland walking tour, you're going to see videos of like, we watched one on it's called the Portland building, and it has the famous Portlandia statue in front. I learned all about when it was built and all of the stuff that's happened over the years. It was very cool.
You know, in The Brave Learner, I talk about a way to approach history with children because kids don't have the same ability to comprehend big chunks of time the way adults do. You need a few decades under your belt to really start to grasp what history is. And one of the ways I suggest starting is concentric circles. So we start with the history of the child. Like, when were they born? Where were they born? Do we have pictures of where they were born? Like, can they understand the world as it was? What happened? What was like the biggest song of the year they were born? What was the biggest event of that year, the year they were born? Starting with your child is a place to help them have a sense that there's history, that the story is what we're looking at. Then we expand out to our family, and our family is parents and siblings, followed by grandparents, aunts and uncles, where we start to take in time before they were born, right? That's the beginning, but those real people still exist. So it's time before they were born, but they have evidence that this history is actual and real and happening still. The next place you go is your local community. And that's what I think these ideas really speak to, because we can't talk about ancient Rome when we don't understand Cincinnati and Portland, right? Like let's start where we live. The place we live actually has a story. It has a history, and it goes back even further than our grandparents. And so that's a way to kind of grow the capacity to take in these incomprehensible amounts of time.
That's right. They're all over Portland. There are these iron rings or brass rings on the sidewalk from the days when people used to tie their horses to them. And the rings are still there. And a contemporary Portland artist started tying toy horses to them. And it took off. It became a thing. And like you'll see horses tied to, the sidewalk all over the city. That is something I would take a little kid to see, right?
100%. In fact, I think a lot of cities now have that kind of thematic element. In Cincinnati, it's a pig. And of course, our marathon is called the Flying Pig. And it's because this was a major source of pork. This was a German town. And so there are a lot of pork industry here. So we have these pig statues everywhere. The one that's at the Cincinnati Shakespeare Festival is a Hamlet, right? He's dressed like Hamlet, but he's a pig.
That's amazing.
Right? And so you can see those all over the city. If you go to Chicago, it's all cows. They have cows everywhere. If you go to my boyfriend's neighborhood, it's all squirrels. Like many cities have these thematics. So that's another way in, because kids can look for those and understand why they exist.
Yes. And you can do it with place names too. Look up, why is my street named what it's named?
Wonderful. Gosh, I mean, when I listen to this, I just think there is so much we can do that doesn't require paper, that is actual learning, and that's actually interesting to children. I just love that. Melissa, we spend a lot of time in the car when we're driving, and I'm thinking of us driving downtown to go on one of these walking tours. What can we do for kids while we're driving to keep them actively engaged?
Okay, one of my best tricks was a cookie sheet with magnets.
Oh my gosh, fabulous.
Like alphabet magnets, or we had tangram magnets at one point.
Oh yeah. Gosh. And that sounds like it's something that with magnetiles, you could even be building in your car. That would be incredible.
Yeah. And those also worked. We've used them on hospital beds.
Yes. I mean, honestly, I think cookie sheets are underrated. There's a lot you can do with them, because you can do a project and put it on a cookie sheet and then slide that into a bookcase or a drawer. And then everything stays together and you take it back out. We used to use cookie sheets for modeling clay, like creating little villages, etc.
And stuff doesn't roll off the edge. So you're in the car, even just as a place for a kid who wants to write or color. The crayons have a rim, they don't roll all over.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, so this next one I want you to introduce directly, because I like the alliteration. Let me just say that.
Okay, this is a trick I use for myself, but it's useful for my older kids too. For when I'm trying to figure out what thing to do next. I call it's my focus, fire, fast, fun list. I just make a grid on a piece of paper, 4 quadrants. And if you've ever heard of the Eisenhower matrix, that was the grid that it was urgent and important. And you figured out what was both urgent and important. And and then, so you can read about Eisenhower matrix. Here's my focus, fire, fast, fun. Focus is work that I know I'm going to need anywhere from an hour and up to really focus on. So I say 45 minutes or more. For kids, this is useful for me when thinking I need to give my kids a focus block so they have time to write that essay or read, with concentration, right? Fire is where I put things that take, say, from 15 minutes to 45 minutes or an hour. And when I get them done, I feel like I'm really on fire.
Okay. Can you give an example?
So for a kid, a fire activity might be completing a certain number of math problems, or even just the time interval, working on math for half an hour, right?
Okay.
Fast is just like it sounds. It's stuff that takes 15 minutes or less to do. Moms often have a million fast little tasks and you can batch them together. But for a kid, it could just be a fast task would be, oh, we need to change your sheets today. Let's go strip the bed.
Got
right?
it.
Or it could be run around the block.
Yeah.
It could be go water your peas that you planted, which we'll come to later in this list. Right? So having just a little mental list or on paper of fast tasks that you can offer to a kid, or like say you need to work with one kid and you want to give the other one something to do for a second, right?
Got it.
Those are fast. And then the fun block for myself, I'm going to forget to like use my free time to do something actually fun. For kids, that's where you put some of these ideas.
Yeah. So you're kind of classifying the activities, right?
Yes.
Which ones need focus? Which ones are going to make me feel like I got it done? That's a great feeling to be done with that task. The fast ones are quick things that you might overlook if you didn't pay attention that they needed to happen. And then fun is just a way of relieving yourself from all of this responsibility. It's something that you can do that kind of re-energizes you. So when I heard you, here's what I was picturing. Like for focus, I might want everyone to really pay attention during read aloud time, right? They're listening and we're going to talk about the chapter we just read. Fire might be asking them to rattle off something that they really have learned. You know, they can master their address and they can rattle it off and let me know that they really know it, right? Or maybe they can recite, they know what a verb is and they're going to tell me what those verbs are. And it's going to just be quick and to the point. It's not belabored. It's like, okay, we just read this paragraph. How many verbs did you hear? Which ones are synonyms? Did anybody
know? It's galvanizing.
Yes.
Practicing like the presidents you were talking about, memorizing the presidents. That could be a fire task.
Are you looking to spark some interest in writing in the new year? I'd like to recommend our Brave Writer online writing classes. They are specially designed for the busy parent. We like to give you immediate support as you face writing obstacles with your child. First of all, Brave Writer takes a unique approach. We think it's important for kids to have supportive encouragement and emotional safety in writing. Our writing coaches are kind, and they offer robust feedback that addresses every part of the writing process, from idea to finished product. Our classes are short. They run between 3 and 6 weeks with rolling enrollment, meaning new classes start every Monday. And because our classes are asynchronous, you can log in when it's convenient for you. Our most popular classes sell out, so register soon. You can see a sample class and learn more about our program by going to the link in the show notes. And then fast, I loved that you said it was things like stripping the sheets off the bed, but it could also be putting your books back where they go before the day is over, so they're exactly where they need to be the next day. Or maybe it could be something like sharpening the pencil that we keep forgetting isn't sharp. Just think through what is going to make your day better quickly.
Right. Getting out the cookies for poetry tea time.
Oh, love that. And then the fun, of course, your kids will all have various ideas of what that is. But I know for my kids, when we were trying to take breaks, I always wanted it to feel a little fun. So we went through different seasons. There was a season one spring where we just played soccer in the backyard every single day. Wasn't actually a game. It was just kicking the ball at predetermined goals between apple trees. And we would just run around and everybody looked forward to that. And we did that until we didn't. Then there was a time when we threw frisbees. Then there was the time we jumped on the trampoline. Then there was the time we took the dog for a walk. So maybe make a quick list of what is fun, so you have it to look forward to, right?
Right. You're putting things like blowing bubbles.
Oh, yeah.
Playing wiki sticks, doing jump rope.
Passing out chewing gum.
Yeah, right. And I want to say, as your kids get older, one of the real valuable things about this tool for me has been making sure that if I have put something in that focus quadrant, that I'm giving them focus time.
That's so true. And that means turning off computers, everybody being focused, because it's not fun to focus if somebody else is just having fun. So
Right.
create some space for that. That's really good.
If I want a teenager to have focus time, then I may need to take the little one out back or something.
Yes. Okay, this is super funny because I did not realize that you were going to talk about pencil sharpening, and I already brought it up. So tell me about that one.
I love that you said it because it speaks to our experience of everything can fall apart because nobody can find a sharpened pencil.
Oh my gosh, that is so freaking true. I got to the point where I was buying them in batches of 20. I'm like, if I have 20, certainly we aren't going to run out of pencils, but
So I wrote on the list a little thing that makes a big difference. Assign pencil sharpening to a weekly time slot.
So good.
And get yourself a good sharpener.
Yes. And if it's electric or, battery operated, kids enjoy it even more. Then they want to do it. Also, I love your recommendation that we have scissors and tape in every room. I learned early that you stock up before the school year, not during the school year. So go ahead, take advantage of whatever sales you can find and buy more than you think you need of everything. And then there is this feeling of abundance instead of arguing about scarcity. I think it's really important, if possible.
And I would find that nothing killed our momentum like me having to go look for the thing that I knew I had stashed away somewhere. So when I just learned how to keep a little bin of supplies in every room where we congregated, it changed our lives.
I also know a tip from Dottie that I took to heart was a portable tool caddy with all that stuff. So you could carry it room to room. So if you are the kind of person who likes to have things all in one place, put it in a portable caddy and then you can just carry it around with you.
I forgot my art go bag. I forgot all about this. I used to have one tote bag that was stocked with, if we went to the park, what would we need so the kids could pull out watercolors?
Love that. Love that.
And it was separate from the watercolors that were in the house, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Nothing ever left that bag, really.
And why were the watercolors praying? Because they always were.
And you got water brushes that you could fill with water. And then you just always had a bottle of water in the bag.
That's it. That's it. In fact, that's your next recommendation.
Speaking of watercolors.
We're so good at this, Melissa.
We are. It flows. Get a big piece of watercolor paper. Paint it just with water. Just get your paintbrush wet, really juicy, and paint it with water. Then, the kids are doing this, not you. Then have the kids use color, dip it in the color. And you know what happens when you paint with a wet brush on wet paper, the color bleeds out, it spills and it blends and it makes other colors. Kids love wet on wet watercolor painting. Just let them fill a page that way and then cut it into bookmarks.
I love this. It's almost like tie-dye is how it ends up looking, right? It's like these starbursts of color. Yeah, that's super fun. The other thing is painting on and drawing on unusual surfaces. So we used to do pastels on sandpaper, and that was always really fun
texture.
Too. Yeah, the texture was great.
If you have whiteboards, we would always flip them over and use those as the board painting boards. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yes.
We would put our watercolors on that and then they could dry. And I took Legos and made a little stack so that I could stack the painting boards for the paintings to dry.
Oh my gosh, that's a good hack.
We lived in a very small house and I had 800 small children. At least that's how it felt.
This next one I love. Take an afternoon to create playlists for yourselves. One for afternoon tidy up chores, one for reading, if your family's reading silently, one for songs you play in transition between activities. There is something about music. We were really into playing movie soundtracks during copy work. That was our hack because it was wordless, but it was familiar, right? So if you have a good Disney soundtrack or Star Wars theme or whatever you really love, Sense and Sensibility was one of our favorites. It creates a mood, but without words.
The kids took group piano lessons and their piano teacher had a special melody that she would play when they had all been with their headphones on practicing something. And now she wanted them to come back to attention. She would play this one song. Oh, and that meant get up and come look at, stand behind me and watch what I'm doing.
And using music as a cue is really kind of beautiful. because it feels so much less intrusive. Fewer words. I'm always saying to mothers, say less, do more, right? So if you can, ring a gong and that means come to the table. I mean, kids actually respond pretty well to that.
Right. And it can be Pavlovian. Like there is a song from the Trolls soundtrack of all things that I like to listen to. It puts me in the mood to clean my house. I don't know why.
That's obviously wonderful, right? It gets you hyped. It gets you going.
Yep.
One of the other helpful tools that we've recommended many times is the Brain Breaks book that Josh McNeil wrote when he was with Lakeshore Learning. That book is still available, and it is filled with a whole slew of sort of self-regulating activities to keep kids from exploding or yawning or declaring boredom. So one of the ideas that we've shared in the past is when you need to re-up attention span, right? So we always say kids' attention span is age plus 1 minute. So if you've got an 8-year-old who gives you 9 good minutes, take a brain break before you ask for 9 more minutes, right? Do something small, blowing bubbles, kicking one of those little paper footballs with your, flicking it with your finger, walking on a piece of painter's tape on the floor and walking like you're on a balance beam. These are just a few of the activities, but they're a way for your child to re-up engagement.
A couple of weeks ago, you and I were talking about the squishy stuff that our kids liked to use while listening to read alouds.
Yes.
And that's a focus aid. And you mentioned like modeling clay, and I talked about Sculpey, and we both talked about beeswax. And it hit me today, different kids like different things. What if you had a day where you experimented, you got out all the squishy things, silly putty, Play-Doh, Wiki Sticks, right? And let everybody figure out what they like best.
That's so good. And the one thing I want to add to that list right away is pipe cleaners, because they are underrated, but so much fun. Like there's so many things you can make with them. So yes, I love that idea. Perfect. And if you say to kids, we're going to experiment with these, and then each day you pick something, they love that. They like being in charge of having an opinion that has merit and value in the family. So very good idea. Okay, here we are. We've arrived at the peas.
The peas.
Planting the peas. Tell me about that, Melissa.
Spring is on the way here in Portland, and there was an old custom to plant peas on St. Patrick's Day in some parts of the world. Probably started in Ireland, I'm guessing. And because peas like cold soil and cool nights, and that goes for sweet peas too. And they grow fast. So cheap, easy activity with a rapid payoff. Have your kids plant some peas. You can do them in a paper cup.
Oh, wow.
Put them on your porch. You can get a pot. You can put them in the ground. It's nice if they have something to grow up. So, along your fence, or put a bamboo stake in the pot.
This I want to do. One of my best memories as a child was being around sweet peas. I just love the fragrance of those flowers that come from that. And it's something I've always wanted to grow. I feel like you just gave me my next task. I've got just a few days before St. Patrick's Day to get ready, but I love this idea. Good.
You can also fast growing seeds like radishes, nasturtiums, scarlet runner beans, as we get a little bit later into the spring. I think anything with a quick payoff for kids, young kids I'm talking about, it's just so nice for them to see the sprouts coming up quickly.
We used to do sunflowers, and that's the same thing. They grow so fast. They get so tall. The flowers are so satisfying. It's a later plant time. You don't plant them now, but check whatever your zone tells you, and those can be really exciting for kids as well. Okay, how about this? Cutting out frames?
Okay, this one uses all those scissors you've stashed. You get a piece of cardstock, like black cardstock, and you just cut a frame. So you just cut, like a hole in the middle to make it's a frame, like a picture frame. And then you get clear contact paper and stick the frame onto the contact paper and trim the edges, so on the outside of the frame. When you peel off the sticky backing of the contact paper, now there's a sticky surface, and you can take tissue paper and tear it up, and kids can make mosaics. Like just stick it to the contact paper. The reason this idea is in my head, Julie, is because I was looking for something recently that I did not find, but I found a kit that I bought from the Hearth Song catalog in 1997.
Oh my gosh.
And it was one for each month. So it had things printed like shamrock for March, right? And you had to cut out the frame. It was actually printed on the cardstock. So these were shaped rather than a rectangular frame like I just described. And then you did the process that I just suggested. And like we had Easter eggs and shamrock stuck in our windows. Those are the only 2 months I ever cut out.
But that's beautiful. I love that idea. It sounds so simple.
It's like stained glass with tissue paper.
Yes, exactly. All right. So pivoting from stained glass with tissue paper, you talked about looking up local foraging groups. This sounds totally interesting.
Yeah, I didn't say that my list was organized, did I?
No,
it
that's
was pouring
okay.
out of my head. This one, okay. Urban foraging or local foraging groups, you'll find people who know what the edible plants are in your neighborhood or where you live. And you can sign up to go on walks with them. So it's like a birding walk, but for like edible plants.
That's amazing.
And it's just fun to learn, even if you're not planning on actually foraging. There was a point in time when in Virginia, we had learned that chickweed was a really good source of iron and violets were a good source of vitamin C. And my oldest daughter had all the kids in our cul-de-sac out in the backyard. One of the other moms is visiting, looks out my window, and she's like, why are the kids eating weeds in your lawn?
The kids love it. My little granddaughter, Lavender, was eating onion grass yesterday when we went for a bike ride. And I was like, oh my gosh. I remember sucking the little ends of clover. You know, I mean, this is all, that's awesome.
Obviously, I wasn't using pesticides.
No.
Okay, speaking of yards, you can learn about wildlife corridors. Migrating birds and insects need a place to stop and eat and refresh themselves. And as more and more developments have been built, a lot of these corridors just got eradicated, right? So my recommendation is this. Pick one species, bird, butterfly, bee, beetle, something. You know, have your child pick one species that they care about. Learn about it. Look up what it needs. If it's a butterfly, what host plants are native to your area? You can plant those. What nectar plants attract it as well? We learned that, you know, like monarch butterflies, their only host plant is milkweed. That's the only kind of leaf that the monarch caterpillars will eat.
That's right.
And the bright orange of the milkweed flower is what attracts the adult monarchs to land there.
Amazing.
Mason bees.
Oh, mason bees. Tell me about those.
Those are little native bees that live in little hollow stalks or holes, crannies in walls. You can buy a mason bee house. They're solitary bees. They're not in hives.
I see.
So you can put out a little mason bee house. But my recommendation is to start small. Just pick one. Become a wildlife corridor for one species.
That's gorgeous. I was at the birding store the other day buying seed like I do, and they were selling bluebird houses and the nesting material for birds to discover and build nests. That's another thing that you can do. You can actually create in your yard the opportunity for a bird to want to nest there. These are wonderful, wonderful suggestions.
There's a really beautiful book by Robin Wall Kimmerer called The Service Berry. I highly recommend that for your older kids and for you. We also have a boomerang of her book, Braiding Sweetgrass. But the service berry is sort of about reciprocity in nature and including humans in those acts of reciprocity.
Yeah, her books are fabulous. She really understands sort of the relationship between science and the sort of folklore and history of the earth. It's really beautiful. Yeah. And you mentioned there's a poetry anthology that might tie in well as well.
Thinking about this, like embracing the seasons with these springtime ideas, there's an anthology that my kids loved called Sing a Song of Seasons, a nature poem for each day of the year. It was edited by Fiona Waters. And the illustrations are wonderful. There's a companion book that's animals. It's called Tiger, Tiger, Burning Bright. And that's an animal poem for each day of the year. But that little ritual of turning the page and reading that one poem each day meant so much to my younger children. For older kids, I really love the anthologies edited by James Cruz, like The Wonder of Small Things. Are you pulling out the book, Julie?
I'm pulling out a book. My kids, when I had my semi-retirement party, they gave me a book called A Nature Poem for Every Day of the Year, edited by Jane McMorland Hunter. And so just when you said that, I was like, is it the same one? But it isn't, but it's beautiful. And it does have some illustrations in it. And each month is, set apart so you can figure out what month you're in. So yeah, poetry combined with nature seems to be a wonderful theme for our kinds of families. That's beautiful.
That's that sort of little fast benchmark in your day. Turn the page, read the poem.
That's right. That's exactly right.
And if you have a space in your house where you could prop that book open, and so it becomes almost like, in libraries where they would have the dictionary stands, back in the 1900s when I was little.
No, that's right. Anytime that you can leave something out that is visible and observable, but that you aren't insisting be read, there's a greater chance of discovery and curiosity. And sometimes things fall flat and they're not what the child's interested in. But having lots of opportunities like that, field guides, poetry books, that's what creates a home that does the schooling for you.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. This next idea is something that it fits in that, like, I'm feeling a little tapped out, but I want to do something meaningful for middle and older kids. Make a list of short stories that you would like to read and discuss with your kids. And I'm saying that because a short story, this is something you can do in one afternoon.
Yes.
You can read it. You can read it out loud, or you can all go away and read it together and then discuss it. It's a short-term, really rich literary activity, like maybe between bigger, longer books, or maybe at those times when life is just filling up and you feel like academics are getting shoved aside.
Yeah, and sometimes it's hard to figure out what short stories should be read. So Melissa, if you have like an anthology that we can recommend, that would be amazing. There's such a range, right? You might find short stories just in your library that are contemporary. And of course, there are those collections that really go through the classics.
Right.
But some of them are also like, wow, like they have such sort of searing endings. So be sure you pre-read before you read with your kids. For some kids, some of these could be kind of emotionally demanding. Let's put it that way.
That's really important advice. I remember reading A Jury of Her Peers. Is that Sarah Orne Jewett? I have to look up. I think that's who wrote it. I had done that story with my older kids, and I did it with my daughter Rilla when she was, I don't know, maybe 15. And we were all together the day that we had that discussion. And that story just kind of shattered her in a way that she later said was good. But in the moment, it was like very emotionally intense.
Well, I felt that way with An Occurrence at Elk Creek Bridge by Ambrose Bierce, which was written in 1890, post-Civil War period. And, a lot of good short stories have kind of a twist at the end. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, they can be emotionally loaded, but high schoolers love that kind of thing. Like, they love that feeling of like, suddenly it becomes, the cask of Monte Cristo.
Right.
That's a terrifying thing to read, or The Lottery. I hated that book, that story by Shirley Jackson. But for some kids, these are really powerful and a nice alternative to full length. I like that.
And really good doorways to discussing literary techniques, literary devices, and things as well.
And then we have one last idea. Here we go. Tell us about Erin's reading journal.
Okay, this is something I just saw this weekend for the first time. My 20-something daughter brought it over to show me. She had a notebook that she wasn't using, and she wanted to keep a reading journal, but she wanted it to be visual. So she had some stickers, and every time she finishes a book, she chooses a sticker that sort of matches or represents that book, and she sticks it on the page. So this page was like rows of 4 stickers. And under each sticker, she had written the date. And it was, I don't know, 4 or 5 rows of stickers on the page. It spanned a couple of weeks. And on the facing page, she had written like the name of the book and the author and a couple of notes about it and the dates that she spent reading that book. So it's a really simple, like one spread visual reading journal. And the sticker idea just captivated me. I'm totally stealing it for myself.
Well, yeah, because whenever you have to do a visual representation of something, you're actually using your critical thinking skills. And it's very satisfying to stick stickers on things. That just is like a reward just for reading the book. You get to peel off the back and stick a sticker somewhere. It's funny how those little tactile kind of tropes actually scratch a certain kind of itch. And if you are in a charter school situation where you have to show evidence of learning to your educational facilitator, having a journal of the books you're reading and what you're getting out of each one, or the short stories you're reading or the poetry you're reading, my goodness, that is just a fabulous artifact of learning. And I love that.
What I respect so much about her idea is that it's doable. It's no pressure on her. It's got the like pleasure aspect keying in, but she said she had looked at like reading journals online and they were very, very, like she just knew she wouldn't stick with it if she had to decorate pages and stuff. So I like how doable it is.
Yes. And sometimes it's really nice to get inspired by the stuff that you can purchase, but then to just make something a little more rudimentary because it also lowers the stakes. I remember my son Liam and I, when we were into birding, we bought these birding journals and they had like a place to write the date and where to write the bird and where you saw it, and then a description of the experience. But the pages were really beautiful. And neither of us ever used it because we were so afraid of ruining it with like a spelling error or a misidentified bird, right? And so what we found ourselves doing is writing on a sheet of paper and transferring it to a list that was in like a spiral notebook. And we never actually put it in these fancy little journals. And so just good to remember that sometimes you have to lower the bar to experience success.
It's so true. Sometimes it's the lowest stakes materials that have led to my family's biggest success. I mean, go back to those index cards with the chronology game, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you just need index cards. That's it. End of story. Melissa, this was such a delightful list. I can picture parents listening, taking notes, and being triggered by the things they already know work well, like being reminded of the things that they're good at. If you feel compelled or interested in sharing those ideas, we would love to hear them. You can email us, help@bravewriter.com. Just put podcast in the subject line, or you can text those ideas to our text phone number, which is in the show notes.
And I want to say, having done this and gone from feeling flattened to feeling very energized just by generating this list, Julie, I think a good idea is to start a good idea notebook, or
I love that.
Apple Note or Google Doc.
Yes, if you start collecting your own good ideas, it's a kind of planning from behind, and it can help you on those days when your brain feels broken. And we have those days where we have too much stress in our lives or in our culture or in the news, and yet you still need to carry on the task of educating your children. It's nice to give yourself support. So when you have the ideas, jot them down so you can refer back to them. Melissa, thank you. This was really brilliant. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you, Julie.
Okay, that's another Brave Writer episode in the books. Thanks for joining Melissa and me today. We love it when you leave us reviews, when you send us comments via text message. We read them all. We also couldn't do this show without our fabulous production team at Nova, or Jeanette Hall, the Brave Writer team member who handles all those administrative details you know nothing about. In the meantime, we hope that you have a fantastic week. Keep going, think well. We're rooting for you.